Thank you, Mr Speaker, and before I proceed into my maiden speech, let me offer my personal congratulations to you on your election to such high office. I'm sure you'll perform the role in a dignified and balanced manner. Similarly, I'd like to also offer my congratulations to all the new ministers in the new government, as well as all new members from both sides of the aisle, who have taken up their seat in this parliament for the first time. We owe our electorates and the state at large resolute and determined representation. I thank His Excellency the Governor for opening this, the 54th Parliament of South Australia, and for the excellent speech he delivered to mark the occasion. I wholeheartedly support the motion to adopt the address in reply. It is with great humility and pride that I take this seat in Parliament as the member for Narungga. Mr Speaker, it is a somewhat surprising development that I find myself taking my seat in this place after having never sought an elected office of any sort prior to my nomination for pre-selection in the seat in Narungga. I have long been an interested observer in politics and business, and indeed a card-carrying member of the Liberal Party since my initial year of university, but never anticipating a term as a Member of Parliament. I owe the retiring member for Goyder a great deal of thanks in this regard. I met with Stephen Griffiths, and he's in the gallery today, and discussed with him politics, representation of Goyder, parliamentary procedure and a great deal more. He was in the midst of what would turn into his final term of parliamentary service. But this spurred my interest into new heights and ultimately to serious consideration for seeking election at the conclusion of Stephen's term sometime in the future. However, as it turned out, that opportunity presented itself a great deal quicker than either of us had anticipated, with Stephen deciding to retire from the role not all that long after that initial discussion. Fortunately for me, I sought pre-selection and was successful, and I will forever be thankful to the Liberal Party members for giving me the opportunity to represent them and the people of Narungga for putting their faith in me. I will just briefly mention my background here, Mr Speaker, and which I hope will help explain why the Narungga Liberal Party members endorsed me as the candidate to stand at election. I was born and raised in Kadina on the Yorke Peninsula to a wonderful family. I will never take for granted the environment in which my parents, Michael and Kayleen Ellis, raised my brothers and I. It was without controversy or scandal and completely enjoyable. I cherish the memories I have of growing up in regional South Australia, hanging around the sporting clubs, be it football, basketball or cricket. Spending countless hours at the football club particularly was a great thrill as a child and great learning in a number of fields. I still play footy and basketball for Kadina to this day, with only a few seasons spent elsewhere thus far in my playing career. The wonderful community spirit and local community events, often organised by local service clubs, is something that I love about country towns, and it gives me great pleasure to serve the Apex Club now that it is my turn. I have fond recollections of going camping to all corners of our wonderful state, with nothing but a camper trailer, camp stove and basic supplies. These trips were great lessons in patience, with three brothers cramped in along the back seat for hours at a time, in resourcefulness and finding things to do out in the bush with no other screens or technologies to distract us, and in preparing our own food from basic ingredients. Great lessons indeed, but unfortunately I'm not sure I mastered any of them, particularly not the cooking lessons. My mother's family were from a farm near Butte, and I feel incredibly fortunate to have had a lady like my Nana Ann in my life. A single parent who lived in a lonely farmhouse with 3 children, but who remained a stoic parent and grandparent. Nana did it really tough for some years, but dealt with the circumstances as they came and just got on with the job. Nana was determinedly individual right until the end, and I'm sure she'll be smiling down on me today. My father's family owned and operated the local newspaper, and the Yorke Peninsula Country Times would sustain our family's life as well. I attended school at Kadina Primary School and Kadina Memorial High School, which have since amalgamated, and have fond memories of walking to and from school, mateships formed at school, which last today, and of caring teachers and staff. Indeed, 3 of those close friends, Brad Toole, Chris Flavel and Duncan Curnow, would go on to help on election day, while many others offered their support, which is evidence of the bonds formed. I would then go on to attend Prince Alfred College, which was an awakening of sorts. While I'd been able to coast along in Kadina, I now found that more was expected of me. And I like to think I rose to the occasion. I was captain of boarding in my final year and a school prefect, and managed to achieve a grade sufficient to enter law school. Prince Alfred College is a magnificent school, and they have played a significant role in getting me to where I am today. Similarly, the bonds formed at Prince Alfred College will endure the test of time, with Lou Latchford, Bill Sando, Matt Rode, Justin Gratz, Matt Gillespie, Adam Perryman and Henry Good all helping in various capacities throughout the election campaign. After 5 years of study at university, I was admitted to the Supreme Court of South Australia, ready to practice law. But at that point, I returned home and became the fourth generation of Ellis to start work at the Country Times. For 4 days a week, I worked with a camera, pad and pen as a journalist, and on Tuesday, which is printing day, I put the boots and ink-stained shirt on and worked on the printing press. I've been very fortunate to have a wonderful grounding that has prepared me to enter this place. It became all the more apparent that the relationship I had formed with Stephen Griffiths was, and will continue to be, a valuable and cherished one, as upon entering campaign mode he was quick to offer his support for my campaign and help form a volunteer campaign committee of dedicated, community-minded local Liberals, and then to lead that group as my campaign manager. I should note a few other valuable contributions to that campaign committee that played a big role from the outset. In addition to Stephen's contribution, I was fortunate to have the services of Jamie Smith, who was in the gallery today, a man whose advice I've grown to hold just about above all others. Narungga SEC President Graham Matchos, my partner Courtney, and Rosemary Cock, who has gone on to join me in the electorate office. Each of those 5 people offered sage advice and counsel, presented ideas for campaign activities, organised many fundraising and engagement events, and so much more. I was exceedingly lucky that those people were willing to selflessly donate their time toward the cause for Narungga. I also mentioned my colleagues in this place who visited the electorate during the campaign in support of my efforts. The now Premier Stephen Marshall, the first female Deputy Premier and Attorney General Vicky Chapman, new ministers the Honourable David Ridgway in the other place, who visited multiple times and whose advice I sincerely appreciated, David Pisoni, Tim Whetstone and Stefan Noel. I very much appreciated their support of Narungga. I also would not be in this place without the motivated, hard-working Liberal branch committee members, and I mention the presidents who led so admirably. Anthea and John Kennett in the North Patch, Chris and Beth Butler on Southern YP, Richard and Trish Konzag over at Malala, covering the Adelaide Plains, and Don Davey in the central part of York Peninsula. There are 30 polling booths in Narungga, and all were covered on election day by willing volunteers who believed in the cause. There are so many others worthy of mention, in no particular order. Peter Oswald for his help fundraising and on campaign day. Ryan Kelly, who controlled the beautiful town of Wallaroo almost single-handedly. Neil and Dale Sawley, Glenys Blacker, Meredith Westbrook, and everyone else who helped in the Kadina Wallaroo Moonta area. Malcolm, Ben and the entire Eglinton family for their advice and help whenever it was needed. Helene, Daniel and Peggy Gardner for both continuing to help in Moonta despite being into their 90s. Grantley Dodd and Paul D for flying the flag in Stansbury. Howard and Jan Hill for ensuring that Ardrossan was core-fluted. I'll be forever indebted to Katrina and Ashley Nankiville for their help and guidance and look forward to continuing to work with them going forward. Tanya Stock continues to be a voice that I value and I am thankful to her. Dean and Judith Hoare, particularly Judith for manning Yorktown in difficult circumstances. Ian Jenkin at Dublin, Jeff Cook at Minleton, Dean Dolling at Port Broughton, Jane Butler at Yorktown and on pre-poll, and so many others who are worthy of mention but will miss out due to time constraints. A final thanks to the wonderful Donna Stevens for driving from Adelaide to help on pre-poll and in Edithburgh on election day. I will be forever grateful to you all. The campaign for Narungga was a fascinating one, and indeed a steep learning curve for both myself and my campaign committee. Despite not having a pre-selected opponent for some months, I was driven to meet weekly goals I'd set and for months was out door knocking without opposition, hosting and attending community forums and events and preparing content for promotion. Those in this room may view that as a luxury not afforded to all candidates, and in hindsight I wholeheartedly agree. However, at the time I vividly recall lamenting the shadowboxing and eagerly anticipating a sparring partner. As they say, be careful what you wish for. Eventually I was joined by a raft of other candidates and the campaign began in earnest. At that point I was thrilled to have the counsel of a number of people who provided invaluable moral support. Primarily my family, parents Michael and Kayleen, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, but I anticipate are watching over the live stream, were always available for inspiration and motivation when door knocking or letterboxing seemed onerous or difficult. My brothers, Nelson and Giles were always only a phone call away and kept my feet on the ground as only brothers can. My partner Courtney made a contribution to my campaign, and more importantly to my life, that is beyond description, but I shall attempt nonetheless. Unfairly, Courtney shouldered an obscene amount of work around keeping our home inhabitable, which is no mean feat when living with me at the best of times. She provided invaluable moral support and comfort, even when the stress manifested itself in an unfair outburst once or twice. She organised booths on the day, came to functions, and so much more. It was impossible to list everything you did, but thank you, you are amazing. My grandmother Jennifer, who was in the gallery today as well, helped on pre-poll, helped on election day, and provided great endorsement when needed. I'll be forever indebted to you as well, Nana. Equally important was the support of existing members of Parliament, a few of whom I would like to highlight. Terry Stevens was a guiding light from right after I decided to nominate for pre-selection and continues to be to this day. His advice about what to expect from the opposition, what to do about maximising my chances of achieving my goal, physical on-the-ground campaigning and a calming influence when the stress began to mount up was of paramount importance to the success of my campaign. I appreciate this contribution even more when considering Terry was in the midst of his own bid for re-election, a bid that I'm pleased to see rewarded. Likewise, Stefan Noel, the member for Schubert, and Sam DeLuc, the member for Waite, were valuable resources. They offered advice in semi-regular conference calls where it often felt as though they were playing good cop, bad cop, but they had my best interests and the best interests of the party at heart, and for that I am sincerely appreciative. I would also like to put on the record my thanks to two other people, the member for Grey, Rowan Ramsey, and the Honourable Alan Ferguson, former Senator for South Australia. Both went out of their way to help me win the election with advice, feedback and introductions always forthcoming. To them I say thank you. I look forward to continuing to work with Rowan to provide great outcomes for the people of Narungga, and look forward to continuing to call on Alan for his wise counsel. I also want to acknowledge the support and help of Kendall Jackson, the Liberal candidate for Frome. Despite being in the middle of a campaign of her own, she was always willing to help, and in the final months, Kendall and I were talking on the phone at least weekly, but often more regularly. We would talk about how each of us were doing during that week and compare notes about how we were going. It is with great sadness that I acknowledge Kendall, for the people of Frome would have been far better served by a member of a Liberal government, and I'm sure she will return better than ever. Although a long campaign can be draining at times, there was never any doubt in my mind that the opportunity to represent Narungga was worth fighting for. A significant number of my colleagues have claimed over the past few days that they represent the most beautiful electorate in the state. Now, I regret to inform each and every one of them that this cannot be true, as Narungga is the clear leader in this category. The most beautiful beaches, especially at Ennis National Park, rolling countryside, neat, tidy, welcoming towns, and most importantly, high-quality people. I hold that honest belief, Mr Speaker, and that is why the seat was worth fighting for. It is my driving force to improve the lives of people who live and work in my part of the world, who are as passionate as I am for its future and for keeping and building its reputation as a prime location for food and agriculture, fisheries and tourism. And I don't believe any other party, be it major, minor or independent, can do the seat justice like the Liberal Party can. Mr Speaker, my family has significant roots in the area, and I'd like to just touch on them briefly if I may. Thomas and Mary Ellis arrived in Moonta in 1873 after emigrating from Cornwall, just like a lot of Cornish did in those days, to work in the recently minted copper mine. They brought with them on that long, dangerous voyage from the UK their infant son, William Ellis, who had never learned to read or write after starting work in the mine as a picky boy as a pre-teen. Through sheer determination and perseverance, his son would go on to start work at the local newspaper, eventually working his way up the hierarchy before taking part ownership and eventually full ownership of the Moonta People's Weekly, as well as other newspapers. Thus, Cecil John Green Ellis started our family business, the Yorke Peninsula Country Times, a regional newspaper that serves the entire Yorke Peninsula with its weekly news. My grandfather and father went on to continue to build that business into what it is today. A major respected newspaper, winner of the past 2 Regional Newspaper of the Year awards and local employer. My grandfather dropped out of school midway through grade 9, and my father matriculated without ever gaining any tertiary qualifications. And it just goes to show that there is no replacement for hard work and dedication. Although Cecil got the business started, I don't want to underestimate the importance of my late grandfather, Trevor Ellis. Trevor was a well-respected community member from Moonta who continued the wonderful legacy that Cecil started. A former Citizen of the Year in the Copper Coast Council, he was renowned for public speaking and the ability to connect with anyone from any walk of life. He was famous for having an outstanding rapport with his staff, partly because he always favoured hiring people from the Moonta mines, and the question that carried the most weight when he was interviewing prospective employees was whether they could spell the word fiery correctly. Mr. Speaker, Trevor was a great man, and it was an absolute privilege to have spent time in his gentle care, and he is missed every day. We were well versed in the Ellis family story from a young age. My grandfather was an avid family historian, and it strongly resonated with me. Shining out was outstanding work ethic, a care of family and community, and a driving need to serve both with integrity. There are two things I take from the Ellis family story: that Cecil worked his way from nothing through sheer determination and hard work, and the incredibly fortunate position I found myself in. The story of Cecil building the newspaper into a generational family business inspires me to attempt to implement an economic environment that allows other families to do the same. In building his business, Cecil, nor any of his descendants, relied on government handouts or subsidies in order to get ahead. Rather, he set about building a business that was resilient, self-sufficient and sustainable. I worry that this is becoming an unattainable reality for many small business owners, crippled by overbearing rule, regulation, tax imposts and utility costs. If we want to ensure that business continues to operate, that new startups continue to arrive, it is imperative that we make a change from the previous government and empower the small business sector. Similarly, I feel incredibly privileged to have grown up in regional South Australia, and am motivated to ensure that this continues to be possible for future generations. I'm excited about the Marshall Government's acknowledgement of the importance of our regions, which is a welcome change, I might add, and their role in our state economy. I'm driven to advocate for the rest of South Australia, the part of South Australia north of Jepps Cross, for continued investment in vital infrastructure. Although descendant from Cornish copper miners, I still felt compelled to join the Liberal Party. It became clear to me, after growing up in an era governed by Labor, that the smaller and less obtrusive that government is, the better off its constituency will be. The Liberal Party is a party of individual freedom and free enterprise, both sorely lacking in South Australia at this time. It is enormously satisfying that my first term as an MP will be as part of a Liberal government, and I have to acknowledge that my predecessor, Stephen Griffiths, toiled away for 12 years in opposition without such an opportunity. I have a sense of urgency to use the solid foundation of this Liberal government to build and progress and instigate great change, to make a difference for the people who have placed their faith in me, and I sincerely hope to build upon the work that Stephen Griffiths did for our electorate over his 12 years to build a wonderful Narungga. I owe a lot of people from the Liberal Party a most sincere thank you for their help during the campaign. It certainly was a team effort, and everyone chipped in and played their part. Firstly, to former Premier and current President John Olsen. Thanks to Mr Olsen's ties to the York Peninsula, I was in the fortunate position where I was able to seek out his advice and guidance prior to nominating for pre-selection. From that point forward, John was the most appreciated contact for any advice and led the party admirably to victory as well. Director Sasha Meldrum and her team deserve special thanks for the way they organised the entire campaign, with special thanks to Lena Lale as my point of contact and Julia Ebbs for her design work. A final important thanks to Alex Antic for his repeated efforts to help build the Narungga campaign over the course of the campaign. These efforts resulted in opening the all-important Kadina polling booth with me on the morning of election day. Alex, thank you. Similarly, the Rural and Regional Council of the Liberal Party, led by Nicola Centofanti, were an amazing help. I had the great benefit of hosting the council in Moonta for a day of campaigning, and I will always be appreciative for their contribution. The Young Liberal branch, led wonderfully by Jocelyn Sutcliffe, were a significant help as well and supplied volunteers on an as-needed basis. Thanks to Jack Newton in the gallery today, Jack Clayfield, James Moriarty, Will Van Dissel and others for all of their help. It is much appreciated. Similarly to the federal branch of the Young Liberals, who deserve their thanks for the contribution toward my campaign. Narungga is one of the newly named electorates after last year's redistribution, going from Goyder to the new name, and with that came an extra 1,000 square kilometres. While it is wonderful to pick up new areas that I have a great affinity for, it is a shame to lose towns like Owen, Hamley Bridge and Balaclava, and I will have to think of a new excuse to go and watch the mighty Balaclava Peckers play football. I am proud to say Narungga is named after and is a commemoration of the local Narungga Aboriginal people who are the traditional owners of the Yorke Peninsula. Narungga country extended southwards down the peninsula from a line running approximately between the towns of Port Broughton and Port Wakefield, and the meaning of the word Narungga is campsite. I'm also proud to be the youngest person to have represented my electorate in its history. I humbly hope my involvement can inspire and generate renewed interest from young people in parliamentary processes, in our system, and in the all-important responsibilities it carries. To encourage them to be a voice, to not be apathetic to its necessary systems, to understand the importance of having a go, doing what you can to help others. Regional communities, I think, are best placed to see what can be achieved when like-minded community people gather together for a cause, because we are just used to getting on with making things happen if we want them to. It is one of the best things about living in the country. I'm proud to follow in the footsteps of equally strong advocates for our region who worked hard as representative members in this place. Since its creation in 1970, Stephen Griffiths was a serving Liberal from 2006 to 2018. Fellow Liberal Mr John Meyer, who was also forthcoming with advice and guidance, served for 24 years prior to that, from 1982 to 2006. And before that, an independent Liberal in Mr Keith Russack, from 1977 to 1982. Going back further, well-known names adorn my region's honour board, including the long-serving Raymond Steele Hall and David Boundy. All believed in the need for my electorate to have a strong voice, and I intend to follow their lead to the best of my ability. I also take this opportunity to highlight the important and exceptional diversity that we currently enjoy within the Liberal Party. It gives me great pleasure to acknowledge that our party room can represent every cross-section in our state. I'm the youngest member at 25 years of age, but we have a member in our party still representing their community excellently, who first entered Parliament 10 years before I was born. We are a party of teachers, lawyers, small business owners and everything in between. We have someone from just about all walks of life, male, female, old, young, different vocations, all with valuable insights and previous life, business and community experience. A truly diverse range of people representing a truly diverse constituency. It is important to have such diversity in order to govern properly, to feel empathy and to represent every cross-section of society. I'm sincerely excited about the group of people who have assembled under the Liberal Party banner to usher in a new era of governance for the people of South Australia. Mr Speaker, government's primary responsibility is to provide essential services and infrastructure, and in regional South Australia, I believe that can be done better. While I was on the campaign trail, the same essential services continue to be brought up on the doorstep and at community forums. Regional roads are falling into a state of disrepair, and I'm enthusiastic about the opportunity to get to work fixing these problems. Mr Speaker, after covering in excess of 40,000 kilometres during the election campaign, I can personally identify the Middleton to Atherton stretch and the council-controlled North Coast Road as but a couple of the roads that are in desperate need of repair and reseal. Regional roads need to be safer so that truck drivers carrying vital grain export to port can do so safely, tourists coming to the most beautiful electorate, Mr Speaker, can enjoy the voyage, and so that local drivers simply have enough room to keep four wheels on the road when there is a truck coming the other way. Daily there are near misses as drivers of all sorts of vehicle are forced off of the road, often without a shoulder, to allow passage of a truck. To listen to elderly community members tell of their fear that the jarring ride in the back of an ambulance for an X-ray will do more harm than putting up with the ailment the doctor has ordered the X-ray for is just not good enough. Then there's the issue of whether they can get the healthcare they need in a some way timely fashion. The eye test before the driver's licence expires, or how to wait 4 years in the case of a hip or knee replacement when every day is a struggle. There is worry too about not affording the cost of travelling far away from treatment not available in the area, and in the difficulty filling out the PATS forms and then to fight to receive adequate compensation. Healthcare is continuing to deteriorate in regional South Australia, and I would like to continue the great work of Stephen Griffiths in fighting for services and hospitals. Our government is investing in Yorktown Hospital and Ardrossan Hospital, and we'll be continuing to improve the circumstances of all hospitals in the electorate of Narungga, particularly Wallaroo Hospital, which is in desperate need of an upgrade to cope with the swelling population. The availability of efficient health services locally is the number one priority for people deciding where to live or to retire, to stay or to go. And without confidence in available services, we know populations decline, whole communities die, and we simply must decentralise and build our regional areas. One's postcode should not determine the level of healthcare that is affordable and accessible, and currently everything revolves around Adelaide to the detriment of everywhere else. I look forward to being a part of the solution and ensuring rural and regional hospitals are fully staffed with the complete complement of equipment they need. It is also vital that young people stay in regional areas to live, work, marry, build families, support services and spend at local businesses, all to shore up the future of communities in regional areas. Without a healthy regional South Australia, there will be no Adelaide. As a young person, I'm passionate about the need to stop the drain of energy and talent that is leaving our regional areas never to return. And for this, there must be jobs growth, new industries created and new businesses encouraged. I believe Narungga has an exciting future, and I believe exciting opportunities can be created with the correct policy settings. It is interesting and pleasing to see in this place the many MPs in the 25 to 35 age bracket, particularly on our side of the aisle, and that this augurs well for the future. This place can truly become the voice of a young generation. More young people are realising that government cannot be relied on for job creation, and it's time to empower the private sector to fill that void that exists in South Australia. Mr Speaker, there is one last thing I'd like to touch on, and that is the debate that has been going on for some time in Narungga and elsewhere in the state. The debate between agriculture and mining continues to place undue stress on primary producers as the uncertainty over the sovereignty of their own land lingers. The Liberal Party is the party of individual freedom, and I would look forward to working with the party to ensure that individual landowners are better supported in their endeavours. There is no public interest in government dictating that certain private enterprise occurs on any particular parcel of land, and more needs to be done to give farmers peace of mind. Mr Speaker, in Cecil John Green's office at the People's Weekly, there hung a sign that read, "Each day I come to do my tasks, eager and glad to work, grateful for the accomplishment of the past, but mindful that today demands the best that is in me." Mr Speaker, I'm eager and glad to work for the people of Narungga, great for the ample accomplishments that the constituency have achieved in the past, but mindful that I need to give my absolute best each and every day to ensure that we continue to overachieve. I will carry that message from that sign forward into this House as I represent the people of Narungga. So, Mr Speaker, I'd like to finish by saying that I'm here for small regional towns, I'm here for the people of Narungga, and I'm here for regional South Australia, and I think by logical extension from that, I'm here for South Australia at large. As I said, it is immensely satisfying that I served my first term as a part of the Marshall Liberal government, and I look forward to working for Narungga to deliver every single promise that was made during the election campaign. Thank you for the time, Mr Speaker.
Drunk? Hello, mate. Oh, sorry. You did a lot.